This ain't no joke, this ain't no game. This that CSZ game. They said pull up, so I came. You better put some respect on their name. Yeah, 55 was goody. Kill the vibe, how could he? Big Cardinal on the hoodie. Let me break it down for you fully. This ain't your average broadcast. This ain't just no podcast. The mother shows spread fake news. We just call them broadcasts. West, Joey, Sam, Sean, Dalton, and you know that boy Higgy. He said he don't want no small fries. Tell them they better make them biggie. Yeah, you already know what we be on. We got the crown, we hold the throne. We throw them L's and you take them home. When they ring the bells, you know that it's home. The bar is set, we setting the tone. If we set it, then set it in stone. Now sit in the seat and set up your phone. You in the Cardinal Sports Zone.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Wahman. Today's show, we bring you another great edition of Game Day Prep. As most of y'all know, this is something I started about 3 games into the season because I got tired of doing the whole Q&A back and forth DMing people, and I know so many great people that follow and cover all the sports. I'm like, let's make this an audio show. So that's what we've done. And whereas some people might say we saved the worst for last, I would like to say with my opponent-wise maybe, but as far as guests are concerned, I saved the best for last. Today we're going to talk to somebody that I initially bonded with over Twitter, over music, new edition to be exact.
Let's get it.
Yeah, then seeing how much he loved his parents, how much he loved his friends, and how shooting your shot sometimes works in real life. A 500,000 likes later, he is on one of the opposing fan base's best guys, and one I have been able to rivalry with and enjoy the back and forth. Not too many of those on either side. I did have the pleasure of meeting him face to face covering a U of L UK baseball super regional game. He was dressed to the nines. I looked like a bum. I was in my basketball shorts. But it is, without further ado, it's the Twitter world famous guy and co-host of Cats Talk Wednesday, Terry Brown. Terry, TB, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. You know, we saw each other at baseball. We hung out at a field hockey game.
Yeah.
So not just the big sports. And that's what I like about what you do. You know, football and men's basketball, that's easy, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the ones everybody wants to go to. But I tell folks, those student athletes for those quote-unquote minor sports, they work just as hard as the people you know, man.
Yeah, they do.
You know, sometimes harder, you know, to get that recognition. So I appreciate all the work you do.
All right, man, and I appreciate you as well. Just so those of y'all listening know, this is also a first for me. This is the first time that I have connected the mixer to the MacBook Pro. If it sounds different, let me know. I won't have any way of knowing until I edit the podcast. If you like it, I like being able to see who I'm talking to instead of just awkwardly. And even when we just have the regular podcast and I have people calling over the phone when they can't be in the studio, I hate where I'm wanting to say something. I can't see the other people's face, so I don't want to jump in and stuff. So this is awesome for me. I get to see TB face to face. And let's get it, man. This game will be taking place this Saturday at 7:30 on ESPN2. Right now, the Cards are a 2.5-point favorite, which, as I've explained to you all in the past, it basically makes this a pick'em game since the home team normally gets 3 points just for hosting. As I've said before, worked out for us against Syracuse. We were a 2.5, 3-point favorite against them, handled business. But let's get into game day prep, TB. I asked in game day prep, I asked 5 fun questions. And then we get down to business in the last 5. So you ready?
Yes, sir. I'm ready to go.
All right, let's get it. First question, and these are going to be personal questions because I know you a lot better than I know everybody else that I've done this with. So, first question, what was it like to be a UK fan that was brought up in a U of L household? Or better yet, how did that happen? Because you don't see that a whole lot, or vice versa.
So, I was born and raised, and I've shared pictures. I was a Louisville fan growing up. My parents had season tickets to football and basketball in the early 80s. And, you know, I tell folks my most precious gift, which I still have, is I've got a Lancaster Gordon signed card that I saw. You know, we saw him Freedom Hall, and he signed it for me. Best wishes, Terry. And that's still my most prized possession. Going all the way up to the Samaki Walker years, you know, in the early 90s. So I get to high school, and I'm working on my grades. I'm doing my thing, and U of L says, hey, we're going to give you X to come. I said, great. That's a good scholarship. Kentucky said, we're going to give you X plus Y and a little Z. and so off I went, and I changed my allegiances. Once I got the money in my hands, I was bought. I was swayed. So the reason I don't rivalry as hard as some of my blue brothers and sisters is, number one, it ain't that serious. That's
Right.
number one.
Right.
But number two, I'm not going to talk about Louisville fans because both my parents went to Louisville. My brothers went to Louisville. Like, I was the first person in my family to go to Kentucky. So I don't rivalry that hard. So my dad, the entire time I was there at UK, just called it the school down 64. that was his way of having fun with it. But my family's been really cool since then. I had a niece and some cousins go to UK. So we're still a Louisville family, but I think I kind of took the top off that a little bit.
Hey, I love all the pictures you share of your daughters in their Louisville gear. That makes my heart smile a little bit. Even though it's Philly hockey, it still makes my heart smile a little bit. I don't know what to say.
Oh, that's one of those things, because I used to be a big rivalry person, but like once my girls got into field hockey, Louisville's field hockey program is just, it's been top 10 last 3 or 4 years at least, Final Four last year. So they want to do field hockey. I'm fine with that. People say, are you going to be okay with them going to U of L? Like, yeah. Like, I mean, yeah. Come on, yes.
I think for me, the reason why the rivalry wasn't as serious is because, first off, I was a player in the rivalry. I got up to my recruiting class is one of the most infamous recruiting classes in Louisville football history. I had Don Bibb, Ivan Green, Danny Mosby, Chris Redmond. All those guys were in my recruiting class, and they were 502 boys, and that was probably the biggest Louisville recruiting class that we have ever had. But more importantly, I had a couple friends that went to Kentucky. I went to Doss High School. One of my best friends, Derek Anderson, he didn't initially commit to Kentucky, but he committed to Ohio State, tore his knee up, and then went to Kentucky. And I think he tore his other knee up at Kentucky. Me and him both had multiple ACL injuries. The only difference is that he went pro and made a lot of money, and I'm doing radio right now. So, but no, it was hard for me at a young age to talk crap about my family. Most of my family's from Southern Kentucky, so they were automatically Kentucky fans. Honestly, the biggest, and this one's going to be a longer show because we do know each other personally, and we do share a lot of similar interests. So buckle up because the show's going to be good and it's going to be a little bit longer. But the reason, and I've told this story before, the reason why I become a Louisville fan was simply this. When I was growing up, I had a lot of uncles and aunts that were in Southern Kentucky, and they weren't all, when it come to Kentucky versus Louisville, I saw how they acted when it come to Louisville, the Louisville game. The racial slurs, the insensitive things, and I just knew from a young age I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to be that person. I grew up in a black neighborhood, so if I were to be the same people they were, that would not have turned out for me at all. But more importantly, my grandmother, who was a Kentucky fan, always taught me to love everybody the same. So that just was never in my, and I know that's not the same now, but back then that's the way everything was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just to hear the way that they acted, these were 40-year-old men around 6- and 7-year-old kids just acting a fool, and they're not the same now either. They've changed as well. The more that they've been exposed to more people, because down there it's just a whole bunch of white people. So they don't. I mean, I'm not trying to give them an excuse or anything. It sounds like I am, but like they never. I brought like the first 3 black people to the county that they're. I'm not going to call out the county because I don't want them to get any kind of hate. But like I came down there with Terrence Farley. He went down there with me one time. DA went down there with me one time, and I can't remember who the third person was I took down there. You would have thought that there was a parade in town, the way that we got looked at, and everybody was staring at us and stuff like that. But to get back on track here, like I was raised better, and they were raised better too. So I don't know what the problem, but that's why I became a Louisville fan, because I wanted to be the opposite of hateful. And back then, that's what the fan base was hateful. But speaking of the rivalry, I'll go ahead and go to question number 2. I remember our freshman year at Louisville was the second meeting of the schools in modern day history. It was Coach Cooper's first year coaching. He's the one that swayed me. I heard his speech, and they put on his introduction speech on WDRB. I'll never forget it. And I was like, I want to play for that guy. It sounds like he loves the program. He's going to, and to his credit, he's now the offensive. He is a quality control coach for Alabama. Like, that guy went from literal rags to riches. He's a great dude. He still keeps up with me. I can call him anytime I want to. When I first walked into his office, he's like, gosh dang, Wyman, you're going to be an NFL player one day. Look at that NFL size. And had I not torn my ACL 3 times, I probably would have been. But that's neither here nor there. But it was something that swayed my decision to stay at home and play for Louisville, the rivalry game. And it's something that I didn't get to look forward to as a kid because it just didn't happen. And for a while, the basketball game didn't happen either. Now, I was lucky enough that started getting played, I think, around when I was like 7 or 8, so I didn't have to go too long without it. But speaking of the rivalry, what does this rivalry mean to you?
I mean, it's big time. You know, I've always said that this rivalry is better than Duke, North Carolina. It's better than Ohio State, Michigan, because it's for everything.
Yeah.
Like, it's for everything. I have been to Kentucky and Louisville soccer games. I took the girls. We went to like 6 or 7 straight of those women's soccer games. You know, volleyball. Like, it is the game for every single sport. And when you look at the matchups, it is, generally speaking, at least one team is ranked.
Yeah.
And for the most part, both teams are ranked. Like you talked about the game that you and I met at, it was both teams playing the super regional in baseball.
Yeah.
You know, this year, Louisville volleyball, undefeated #1, hosted Kentucky, the defending champion volleyball team. So, you know, and back when we were growing up, there was men's basketball and cricket. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And so I like that both schools have invested across the board in a bunch of different sports. And it is, to me, it's the best universal rivalry in all the collegiate sports.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. I mean, all the way. So, again, in every, it's not just one sport. You're absolutely correct. Like, when we were growing up, it was just men's basketball, and then a little bit later, football got introduced, and then women's basketball, then baseball, then all of them kind of followed suit, and we got really – there's been a lot of good games in all the sports, from the Lightning game in football to the U of L UK's women's basketball game. I believe that you all ended up on top on that one in a couple years. But so many – I can't even remember, like, the exact years and everything, but it's like – it's not just a one sport. It's uniform throughout the entire athletic program. Question 3, and we're going to get a little lighthearted here. How does it feel to be Twitter famous?
I tell you, for background for folks that don't know, I met my now wife. I slid into the DMs.
He did.
This was August of 2017. We had been, and I'm not sure who followed who first, but I was like, oh, okay, she's cute. And I'm like, I'm looking for an in, right? Like, how am I going to try to make this work? And so she is tweeting about where do you meet the single men? Like, where do you meet single men? She's mid-40s like I am. And my first response is Twitter. And I'm like, awesome. She's like, oh, that's the worst. I'm like, oh, so I got to do my Dion backpedal. So, so I do all this kind of stuff. And long story short, slide to the DMs, and it works out great. And then Labor Day weekend 2020, I proposed. And the funny thing about the tweet, I think that's what you're talking about here, is as soon as she said yes, Okay, had to get on Twitter. She said yes. And then she was like, let's go get a pizza. I was like, all right, great. While we're waiting on the pizza, I do the SpongeBob a screenshot, where she asked for the where you can meet single men.
Brilliant.
My response. And then I do the SpongeBob 3 years later. She said yes. And we get the pizza and it's got like 400 or 500 likes. Okay, great. We watch a movie. I'm up to 10,000 likes. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. Wake up the next day to 200 and something thousand likes. And it's just, so we ended up like 530,000 likes. We got some free booze out of it. Like, it was on BuzzFeed. Like, it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing.
It was pretty awesome.
I will tell you the best thing, all that interaction, I had to mute it, obviously, but of the reactions I saw, I only saw like 3 negative things. Most of it was overwhelmingly positive. I still go back to that tweet because people are responding how they met their person. I met my person in the AOL chat room. I met my person. And so for us, 2020 was rough for everybody.
Yeah.
I love to go back to it and just, hey, there's a lot of good out in the world.
And it really was. I mean, this has to hit a different way for you too, because there's not a whole lot of positive things on Twitter. And if you ask what was you could ask anybody in America what was one of your top 5 bright spots of Twitter in 2020, and that tweet would be in every. My cousin who lives out in Arizona, she'll send me tweets from time to time. She's like, "Oh, this is cute," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's my boy. Like that's my guy. I know him." So I wanted to ask you this real quick before we go to the next thing. Who's the most famous person that responded? Because I know you got some notable, maybe not famous, but notable. I remember back then I was like, oh man, these are some notable people.
The actual Twitter account retweeted it and liked it. Like the @Twitter, which I didn't know. So once it got to like 100,000 likes, I had to mute it, right? Because my feed became kind of useless.
Right.
And so people would point out, well, Twitter retweeted. I was like, I know Twitter. He's like, no, actual Twitter. But a lot of sports people, a lot of ESPN folks, Sarah Spain liked it. Jake Tapper of CNN News, he liked it. Meghan McCain, even though not a big fan of her politics necessarily, but that's still pretty cool. Josh Radnor of, I think that's how you say his name, of How I Met Your Mother, retweeted, liked it. And so, yeah, so
that's pretty cool.
It was all over the place. So we like I said, for as big as it got, because I'm like, oh man, you see something good and then people come to fight it. Like I said, we really were fortunate. There wasn't a whole lot of negative that we saw,
Yeah. And like I said, that was a lot of people's feel. And I appreciate it a lot because I know you pretty much put it all out there on Twitter, and that's something I admire about you because you're not afraid to share your feelings, whether they're good or bad or happy or sad. Like you're an open book, and
oh yeah,
I feel like even though we've only hung out like 2 or 3 times, I feel like you're like one of my best. Like I could go to you for anything, you could come to me for anything, and it's because of how much. And I'm the same way. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I put when my mom and dad are sick, I put that out on Twitter. And it's not for attention, just like you didn't do what you did for attention, but just so they can get some good vibes and some good prayers coming their way. So,
and Twitter is a tool. Like we say, social media is bad. It isn't. Social media is just a neutral. It's all about how you use it.
Right.
Like, is my baseball bat bad? Well, not if I'm, at a baseball field, but if I'm beating somebody, yeah. So it's all about how you use it. And I've had so much good come from Twitter. I've met you. I've met a ton of people that way. I met my wife. My show, Cat Talk Wednesday with Vinny, met him on Twitter. Like, Twitter has been a good thing for me because I try to put some good stuff out there.
Yeah, and you're right. Twitter really is what you make of it. I put out a tweet last week that was like, Twitter is full of a bunch of, how did it go? It was like, I have met a bunch of crappy people on Twitter, but I would not trade that for the amount of good people that I've met from Twitter. I mean, just the people that do the show with me on the Saturday or the Sunday shows that we do. Sean Barber, great dude. Met him on Twitter. Dalton Pence, met him on Twitter. Higgy, even though I make fun of him all the time, I met him on Twitter. Sam Baisden, Baseboy124, shout out to him. Met him on Twitter. Last but not least, my brother Joey. I didn't meet him on Twitter. I met him in the living room the day he was born. But just a bunch of great people I've met on Twitter, and they absolutely just with Higgy outweighs the bad. Yes, that's a crappy weight pun towards Higgy, but we joke on each other, and he's not here to defend himself, so I'm going to take the open shot. Question number 4, and I know y'all are like 20 minutes in, we're not even to question 4. No, because Terry's my friend, and the best radio is when you get to talk to people that you like talking to, and I don't get to talk to them a whole lot like this, so I'm going to enjoy and soak this in because you got to think the second half of the show is going to be, we got to get serious and talk rivalry. So it's going to be a little tense there. So let's enjoy the lighthearted moments right now before we go to war in question 6. I'm just kidding. Question number 4. Your favorite Louisville football player of all time that's not named Lamar Jackson or Teddy Bridgewater? Because a lot of people like to – I noticed that from like the first 4 weeks, people start Lamar. So I had to tailor that, like non-Lamar. Then they started doing Teddy. I was like, you know what? I'm taking them 2 out. It don't say me. I know I'm an easy choice too. Take me out of the equation.
Is it? I'm slipping on it. I want to say Browning Nagel, but that's not right. But the quarterback when Louisville won the Fiesta Bowl.
Browning Nagel.
Like that team. Browning Nagel.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just remember, again, grew up as a Louisville fan, and I will give Louisville all kinds of credit. From being independent to being the ACC in 25, 30 years is just absolutely ridiculous, right? I give them all kinds of credit because when I was going to Cardinal Stadium, I mean, you couldn't give tickets away.
They gave tickets away at school. If you'll remember, you got tickets for perfect attendance or semi-attendance at school. We were the team. We were the Prairie View A&M of the 80s. Like we would be the team. Here's $500,000. Let us come play you, or you come play us. We'll beat you like 70-0, and then everybody will be fine. Right,
and so I remember we went to a game against Marshall, who was 1AA at the time, and Marshall just kind of boat raced Louisville, and my dad was like, Louisville's never going to do anything at football, and then just a short period later. The Fiesta Bowl, when there were only like 10 bowls, Louisville was 9-1-1, and I was like, on national TV, they're saying Louisville, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I remember that season, and that game wasn't particularly close, and they took care of the Alabama. So for me, that was probably my best Louisville football memory.
That was the season, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember, I think I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I don't yell out years. I don't want to tell everybody my age. That's my business and not y'all's. But I remember that me and my brother and my dad had stayed up. You talk about memories with your parents that you don't ever forget. It was the first game of the season was against San Jose State. It was on the West Coast, which means the football game came on here a little bit later in the night. We weren't normally. It was past our curfew, even on the weekend, so we were normally in bed. But my dad let us stay up to watch the game. And we were so excited, and then it ended in a 10-10 tie. And we were so disappointed. We were so excited to start the day. And then I think the one loss was to Brett Favre and Southern Miss off that crazy pass play that ended up beating us. Again, I could be wrong, and I'm sure that y'all will tweet me and tell me I was wrong if I was wrong. But I was a lot younger then, so you'll have to forgive me for not remembering completely. But, yeah, I remember how – and then – just the fact that it was like you said, I went out and got the Fiesta Bowl sweatshirt before the game. And had the Fiesta Bowl backpack with the sun on it, and so I was all in, man. I was all in on the Fiesta Bowl, even though I wasn't really sure because of what I had saw so far that we were going to have a chance, but we just absolutely dominated them, and that was definitely one of my top 5 favorite Louisville moments and one of my top 3 favorite sports moments with my dad, alongside with it was Louisville versus LSU, and Keith Legree hit that 3 from about half court to beat Shaq and them. My dad just he got up, threw his TV table off of his lap, went outside, started banging pots and pans, and then same thing with when we won the 80. I was too young in 80 to remember it, but 86 when we won the national championship, everybody was outside shooting off guns and lighting off fireworks and banging spoons and pans. It was just things you don't forget. So.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I grew up a Louisville fan. My middle brother Kenneth made the Courier Journal in 1980 when he was at U of L. When the team came back from winning the championship, he's on the bus, is when everybody's celebrating.
Mm-hmm.
But 86, I remember my parents let me stay up and watch the game.
Yeah.
And to not give away my age, I'm mind blowing that DJ Wagner, DeJuan Wagner's son, is now an elite dude, and I rooted for his grandfather. I remember Milt before those free.
Yeah.
But let's not go too far.
Yeah. And I also remember his dad missing a bunch of free throws to give Louisville a conference championship over Memphis one year too. But that's neither here nor there. Question number 5. We talked about we met by covering. We got to meet in person by covering sports. What is your favorite event that you have got to cover? For me, it was the Sugar Bowl and the 2013 Final Four that most definitely did happen. What was it for you?
Oh, probably. I've been fortunate enough to cover a lot of different things, Kentucky, the tournament, and this, that, and the other. But the road trip I went on to get out to Idaho in 2018 is still probably my favorite memory. That team wasn't very good, but I ended up driving out there. Took 36 hours to get there. It was brutal, but that was a fun memory. I know everybody was following along on Twitter during that period, but that was fun. What did make it fun was got there and they're playing Davidson, and Kentucky is losing in the second half. And I'm like, if they lose, I'm going to sit here and just start bawling my eyes out after it took forever to get there. But that's probably my best memory. But I enjoy covering those games. It's hard, the rules. You can't cheer from the press box. So, people, it's great. You get to go. And it is great, right? Don't get me wrong. But man, you got to sit on your hands. Come on now, that's tough.
Yeah, it's not. I will vouch for you there. There was Cardinal Sports Zone turns 10 here in about 2 weeks, and for the first 3 or 4 years, I was at every football game on the sidelines. Maybe first 5 years, I did it so I could increase my visibility, so I can increase the credibility, things like that. But I got so. Like you said, you can't cheer in the press box. Then on the sideline, like at Louisville, you weren't allowed to show any kind of emotion on the sidelines either. You had to sneak. I'll never forget, we were playing, I want to say it was, let's see, there was a monsoon going. So it was the Cincinnati game where John Wallace hit the field goal with Devontae Parker went off, had an 86-yard touchdown. But he caught that big touchdown pass, and me and Crumb's Revenge were actually in the end zone. And they start shooting off the fireworks. The cheerleaders are right in front of us, and we notice we've got a second to kind of slap fives real quick. So we're real quick.
Yeah, gotta be quick.
You got to be on your feet there. But I get it because you don't want it to appear like you got a bunch of unruly jack-ins on the sidelines, just looking like they're just there to have a good time. So I have since turned over my credentials to Jeff Nunn. He takes phenomenal photos for us at Cardinal Sports Zone. And starting this year, Dalton Pence, our new football beat writer, he's been doing some stuff in the press box. I'm very proud of both of them. Just want to shout them out real quick while we're talking about it. Speaking of really quick, since we are at halftime of the show, I want to thank the fine sponsors of the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast and Game Day Prep, Fitness Market, Shack in the Back Barbecue, Derby City Lawn and Landscaping, Four Pegs Beer Lounge, All-American Pool and Supply Company. Shout out to them. If you need any of their information, let me know. I'll pass that along to you, and we will get you in touch with them because they all provide great services, and I'm not just saying that. I'm the type of person that I'm not going to take your money if you don't have a good product. I cannot be, this is the greatest fitness machines. Like, no, I have a couple of machines from Fitness Market. They're phenomenal. I'm a bigger guy. They fit me well. They do their job. When I talk about Shack in the Back and Four Pegs, man, they have got some of the best barbecue in the city. If I thought it was horrible, I wouldn't. So I just want to make sure that people out there, again, this may be some people's first times listening to the show. I don't just peddle anybody. I only talk about it if I believe in the products and the people, and I have some great people that sponsor the show, so I appreciate that.
So you don't do like Shaquille O'Neal, where the best tweet I saw about that was Shaq is out here on all these commercials like he owes the government money.
Absolutely.
Like he's like.
Now, no, let's not get it twisted. If I was getting offers like Shaq was, I would peddle everything. Belly lint, it's what's for dinner. Like, I'd be doing all of the, like, belly lint. Hit me up if you got a 6-figure deal. I will peddle you like no other. But no, I have turned down some people because I'm like, I don't believe in their product, and it not to be offensive with that, but it's like I want the show to be the best, so I only want the best of the best to sponsor it. So it's time to go to war, TB. Let's try to keep it as civil as we can. I'm just kidding.
Oh, absolutely. I'm level-headed.
I know we both are. I wouldn't have. That's why I'm kind of glad. For those of you all that don't know, and I am going to call him out, James Strebel was also supposed to join us here, but he backed out on us. And, I'm calling him out for it. But I think I would have had – I love him, by the way. He's a great dude. He's been there. Like, a lot of people don't know that when we started the Cardinal Sports Zone show on 93.9, like that was kind of a vehicle to get a lot of people in there. I mean, Marcus Maben was on our show. We got him in there. Perrin Johnson, he was first on our show. Strebel, he came on. I don't remember if you ever came on the show or not, but you were doing some stuff up there too. And they had asked us, what do y'all know about T? I'm like, yeah, he's a good dude. Strebel, good dude. Like, all these people, good dudes. So I mean, there's a lot of history there, and I think I'm glad that Strebel backed out on us, because I think me and him might get a little. Heated.
He gets feisty. He gets fired up.
Yeah, I think we'd have been a little feisty, but at the end of the day, we'd have been all good and stuff. So, question number 6. Kentucky is a team this season that is winning the close games that they normally wouldn't win. Some Louisville fans and Kentucky and national fans have blamed injuries for the other teams. That's fine. It could be true, but prior Kentucky teams would still have lost to this depleted LSU team or the Florida team that had 200 yards penalties against themselves. Why is this year any different than the other years when Kentucky just could not seem to cash in on misfortune or just win these games? Because, I mean, Florida and LSU have been two of the teams that have sort of like Clemson does to Louisville. Florida and LSU has kind of, not owned y'all, but I mean, kind of like that in the past. So why was this year different?
Florida is absolutely owned. When you go on a 36-game, winning streak, you own somebody.
Yeah, that's true.
When you go from 1986 to 2018 without losing, that's ownage. So when and I hate when our own fans dismiss the wins, right?
Yeah. Because
they're like, oh, well, look at what Florida is. Florida's been bad before.
Yeah.
Over the last 40 years, and we haven't beat them. LSU's been bad before, and we haven't beat them. For me, I like Coach Stoops. It was a hire that was not sexy at the time, but he's brought a confidence into the team. And what I mean is, what usually would happen with a Kentucky football team, there's a turnover, fumble, interception, whatever. Everybody slumps their shoulders. And one mistake becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4. If you look at a lot of those Kentucky games, like for the 90s, back when I was in school, Florida would score like 28 points in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was the game. And you'd be kind of close the rest of the game. Whereas now, and this year especially, with all the turnovers, and that's going to be an issue for Saturday's game, the turnovers, you look at they're minus 14 on the season, but they're still got a winning record. They're the only team that's got a winning record. And, they're second from the bottom in turnover margin is because the players believe in what they're doing. And I know this is kind of that it's not X's and O's, but they have a belief, okay, we made a mistake. We can still come back from it. And to me, that's been the difference.
Okay. That's fair enough. And like I said, I'm not trying to pile on or nothing like that, but you're right. Absolutely. In the past, whenever a Kentucky team would make a mistake, it almost seemed like in their heads they were like, well, what can we do to compound this and make it even harder for us to win the game? This year it's been the opposite. These are things that I've heard from Kentucky fans. Like, I don't put a whole lot of because Louisville fans are going to rival hard, Kentucky fans rival hard, but the people who are the hardest, and I guess that's the way it should be because it's y'all's team. But I hear, man, we barely beat Central Michigan, and man, it took too long for us to get going against New Mexico State, and man, we've not beaten a lot of good teams, and if Florida doesn't have 200 yards in holding penalties, we don't win that game. Or if LSU didn't have 5 defensive players out, and it's like, well, those very well may be true, but that's the thing about sports in general, especially football. You can only play the cards that you're dealt, no pun intended. And when those in the past, when those things have occurred, Kentucky has found a way to still lose the game. And my point being, they have not done that this year so far. So kudos to you all for that. That is something that I have noticed. For those of us that don't know, who is the Kentucky football MVP right now?
Oh, the MVP. It's got to be Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah.
He is that guy. So looking back specifically at the Kentucky-Louisville games of the past, I would say the past 5, 6, maybe 7 years, the talent, in my estimation, has been really, really close. The difference has been Louisville has had a guy that can make a play, whether it was Lamar Jackson, Devontae Parker a few years ago. They just had the one dude that if he got the ball in his hands, changed everything. It's like when you go to boxing and it's that tail of the tape and, they're kind of equal quarterback, offensive, defensive line. And then you have that X factor of a dude that can just go out and make a play. And Wan'Dale Robinson is the dude that he makes a play when he gets the ball in his hands, and he puts pressure on the defense to account for him wherever he is. So that to me would be my MVP right now.
Yeah, you're completely right. Whether it's Devontae or even Kyle Bolin, one of the most unlikely heroes, Teddy Bridgewater, Tony Stallings. There's so many, but you're right. When it comes down to it, they made the plays that they needed to make to win, and that's why at the beginning of this season, I was so unsure about this game, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes because my mind has drastically changed since the beginning of the season. But question 8: what are the keys, in your opinion, for that Kentucky? What does Kentucky have to do to win this game?
They can't turn the ball over. They've been very fortunate with, like I said, turning the ball over and being able to negate that. You can't do that in a rivalry game. You and I both know when you look back at rivalry games, and I, for one, I'm glad that the game is at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like it being at the end of the year. I did like it to be the first game of the year too, because that kind of set the tone for the season. But as soon as they moved it to the last game of the year, it seems like the first 3 years, like bowl eligibility was on the line in the last game. It gave you more to play for one team or the other. I think it was Lamar. It may have been Teddy that actually y'all came in here 5-6, and Teddy, like, one of the two. I can't remember because those years were so close together. But one of them, like, they won the game and secured y'all staying home. And then I think a couple years later, y'all did the same thing to us. So, yeah, it probably means more at the end of the season. I have to agree with you on that.
And I love it, especially the ACC, SEC thing. You got Kentucky, Louisville, Georgia Tech. You got South Carolina, Clemson, Florida State. I love being in the mix at the end of the year because, when we were coming up, those rivalry games, Florida State, that was like,
it.
I don't care who they got. I'm gonna tune in. And so my whole thing is, if Kentucky Louisville's gonna raise their profile in football, put it at the end where, like you said, there's some stakes involved. Like, going to what bowl? If you're bowl eligible, I would love to see it get to a point where, this game has an impact on the the playoff scenario.
Yeah.
I don't think that's wild and crazy.
No, especially not if they
with
expand it. Yeah, they're talking about expanding it to 12. I mean, that is a very, very possible. That is very possible to occur, especially if they expand the playoffs to 12 teams. Yeah. I can see that happening too. So you mentioned turnovers was the key for Kentucky. Anything else?
I think, like I said, turnovers, and offensively, people, they like to throw the ball. Everybody likes that air raid. Kentucky's just got to run the ball. Chris Rodriguez, second to SEC in rushing. He's got to pound that rock. He's got to get 120, 130 yards if Kentucky is going to be victorious. And
that's been hard. I mean, I'm sure you know this, but that's been hard. Louisville has held 7 straight opponents to under 90 yards with and let me go. I've got those stats. So held Duke's starting running back, who was a 1,000-yard rusher, Durant to 78 yards, Tucker from Syracuse to 95, with about 40 of those coming in the fourth quarter in garbage time. Shipley from Clemson, 47 yards. Knight from NC State, 23 yards. Guaro from BC, 86 yards. And Virginia's Telapapa, 42 yards. And then all the way back to Wake Forest was the last. Oddly enough, Florida State, we allowed their starting running back 140 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And those were but Ellison for Wake Forest, 67 yards. So our strength is our rush defense. So, and out of all those guys, a total of 1 rushing touchdown by all those guys combined in the last 7 opponents. Only 13 allowed the entire year, which it sounds impressive. It does, but it doesn't. But got to take into consideration 4 of those came in the very first game of the year when we waited till the second half to start playing football against Mississippi. Yeah. So, what about Louisville? What do they have to do to win this game? And after you give your thoughts, I do have some notes I wrote down because I can't really rep for Kentucky as hard as you can. So
I think for Louisville to win, kind of like you said, they've got to stop the run. That's going to be the telltale sign, because the last couple of Kentucky blowout victories, they've just been able to run the ball.
Yeah.
And that has really, been kind of the way they've been able to enforce their will on Louisville. So if Louisville's able to do that, and that's on the offense, I think if Louisville can put up, 30 points, I don't know, does Kentucky win a shootout? I don't know if the offense is built for a shootout. They've had some games against Tennessee, 600 yards, 700 yards against New Mexico State, which I'm not,
right.
That's New Mexico State. But I just don't know if the offense is comfortable trying to score into the 30s where it's a shootout. So if Louisville can pass the ball, the Kentucky pass defense hasn't been great. Mississippi State, Will Rogers kind of ate them up. Dinkin and Duncan, Tennessee. Don't get me started about that. So the Kentucky secondary is susceptible to the big play.
Well, and speaking of Dinkin and Duncan, that's what Malik does best. Honestly, a lot of people are like, well, he's only thrown 5 interceptions this year, but 4 of them have come when he's tried to get out of his comfort zone and make deep passes. Now, he's been making a lot of good deep passes here lately, but also he's had 4 interceptions in the last 3 games as well, with 2 of them coming in the same game. So I would really like to see him get away from throwing the long ball. But so here are my keys real quick. And I don't normally do this, but again, this is rivalry week, so I want to share as much information as I can with everybody listening on both sides. I feel like the keys are this. Number 1, get Malik going. The Cards are nearly unbeatable when Malik gets the ball moving. You've seen that over the last month. Even in the close losses, we've had chance to win those games. And I know there's a lot of people that are out there right now that are like, Louisville fans, not Kentucky fans, because according to most Kentucky fans, we should not have a win this year, and we're going to get beat by 80 Saturday night. But most Louisville fans are like, we could be 9-1 or 10-1 right now, but we could also have a lot more losses. So we have not when it's come down to clutch, we have not performed this year like we did Satterfield's first year. I throw out last year completely because we were without 14 to 16 players every week. I don't like to be that person that's like, oh, well, no. Satterfield was the ACC Coach of the Year his first year here. We made a lot of plays to secure games on the last drive of the game. Those same things that we did the first year is what lost us games the second year. The first 2 years could have very well have been carbon copies if we had caught the brakes in the second year that we did the first year. But anyway, back to TB. You'll know that I go off on a lot of tangents when I do these because things hit my head and I'm like, I got to talk about that. But again, Card's nearly unbeatable when Malik gets the ball moving. Mark Stoops and Brad White will be throwing a bunch of different looks at Cunningham right out of the gate. Sustaining these drives from the beginning will bode well for the Cards. Cards have to stop the run. You said that. I agree with you. I got a whole little thing here about it. Again, the Cards have been great shutting down starting running backs this season. I already went through all the stats. One total rushing touchdown between all those. 13 overall with 4 coming in the opening game. This has to continue this week. This will be our third straight week facing a 1,000-yard rusher. The Cards have not allowed a 100-yard rusher since FSU, and they must shut down Chris Rodriguez. On top of that, secondary back, I don't know how to say his first name. Cavassier Smoke, is that it?
Cavassier, Pastor Cavassier.
Got it.
Yeah. He's the number 2 back, and he's solid. Now, he's a good change of pace back, but you got to lean on Rodriguez, and you throw in Cavassier Smoke, so it's and Juton McClain, so it's 3-headed monster back there. But I do believe that Rodriguez is kind of that bell cow that kind of sets the tone.
And I do have here to back up what you said. Second string back Cavassier Smoke is also a player that the Cardinal defense will have to game plan for. Absolutely. Penetration. This will be one of the top 3 offensive lines the Cards go against this season, maybe top 2. Darian Kennard is likely a first-rounder next April, while the rest of the line is composed of seasoned veterans. Y'all have been up for the O-Line of the Year award 4 out of the last 6 years I saw. They have to build on the success they've had this past month, Louisville. They have to rush Levis into throwing and making mistakes and not just throwing upside-down L's on social media. The safeties versus Wan'Dale Robinson. This is the key matchup for me that will likely decide the game. The Cards will be able to score on that defense, so containing Mr. Robinson is a must. The Wildcats have made an effort all year to get him the ball in different ways, out wide in the slot, jet sweeps, screens, etc. So Louisville is going to have to know where he is at all times, and Kentucky does have a set. Not that they only have 2 good receivers, but they have a secondary receiver in Ali that can benefit from Wan'Dale getting double teamed or schemed up or something like that. Like there is a that's why I said this is the most important to me anyway matchup. And with the Louisville secondary having so many people out due to injury, I just really wish we could have had our full. This would have been a really fun game if Monty could have been out there and if Ketrell Clark could have been out there. But I still think that this is going to end up a very, very fun game. I got 2 more points. I'm sorry. Like I said, I knew this was going to be a longer show because I had so much to say. TB had so much to say. And I know y'all are enjoying us breaking this down. 2 more points, and I promise I'll wrap it up. Running the ball versus throwing the deep ball. As I said earlier, the Cards have to focus on the run and short intermediate passes to dominate. Malik has been making some long passes, as I said before, but he's best when he runs and dinks and dunks on defenses. And you said Kentucky is susceptible to that to an extent. And he also Malik makes less mistakes also. 4 of his 5 interceptions, like I said, have come off of long balls. That 5th one came off of a tipped pass. He seems less accurate throwing the long ball, but he's improved. But his game, his bread and butter is the short yardage passes and just doing what he does when he runs them. It's like I don't like comparing him to Lamar, but just watching him do what he does is just, it's just as special. It's special in a different way than watching Lamar. Our last three quarterbacks, Teddy, Lamar, and Malik, they've just been and I mean as far as starting the majority of the games while they were here, because Lamar had a couple of guys. Well, even Reggie Bonifant was a tremendous quarterback as well. But just it's been very it's taken the sting off of losing as much as we've had. I know that's a weird thing to say, but being able to watch how your quarterback, your leader, handles things. And the one thing I can say is that Coach Satterfield has been in almost every single game that he's coached here at Louisville. He's been in almost all of them. I can't really, off the top of my head, remember a blowout since he's been here. The most important, the question that intrigues me the most is, again, in the 3 seasons where he's come so close to winning or losing. Like I said, the first year, the Cards had the clutch gene. They made plays on the last drives of the game to secure wins. They lost those same games the second year. This year, it's been a mixture of both. I was talking with Steve Rummage earlier, and I was like, how do you fix that? How do you fix? And I guess the answer is you just get better, and you get better athletes in. And a lot of these guys on the team, I mean, I love the whole team, but half of them are still Bobby's guys. So I think the more we get his guys out, not that they weren't any good, but the more we get all Sats guys in, I think that he'll be able to win more games. The season next year sets up favorably for us. So I'm pretty excited if he's our coach next year.
Right, and Satterfield's in the same boat that Stoops was in just a few years ago. When Stoops came in, the cupboard was bare, buddy. Like, it was just, as far as roster. But the first game I covered was 2012. It was Joker Phillips' last home game. That's the first game I covered. And I was excited, and I get to the press box, and I'm doing all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, this is the SEC. Like, there shouldn't be duct tape keeping carpet together. Like, there shouldn't be things like that you have to do. So I think you have to give a coach some time. I tweeted an article that I was reading the other day. Basically, I don't know if you saw this, ESPN Daily podcast had, over the last decade, $600 million, almost over $500 million in dead money coaching contracts in collegiate sports. Coaches getting paid to not coach.
Yep. So
that to me is insane. My point is, if you get a guy that you think is your guy or your woman for female, your coach, right?
Right.
You got to give them some time. Stoops was 2-10, 2-10, 5-7, 5-7. And a lot of people are saying he's not the guy. We got to make the move. Be patient. Be patient. Or you end up like these other programs where you're just cycling through coaches.
Yeah.
Just cycling through. If you get a coach that you really believe in and you give them everything they can, you got to ride out. Even if you have a season where there's a step back season, you got to just ride that out, or else you end up like Nebraska football. Did you know they're still paying Bo Pelini?
I did not know that.
He is still on their books. Like,
we know a little bit something here about paying coaches that aren't here anymore too. So So you feel like we're going to be all in on this person, and it's like I said, I forget the question number. Talk about what's the difference between. We've got a roster full of Stoops' guys. We got a roster full of guys that Stoops brought in that really believe in what he's doing, and they were brought in to fit in what he wants to do. So you don't want to say those old players, those Bobby players are bad guys, or they're student athletes, right? Right.
But it's a difference to have, okay, these are guys that I brought in that are going to do exactly what I need for them to do. Give the guy some time.
Absolutely. And it's almost like you've been listening to our show the entire season, because I've been preaching that since week 1. After we lost to Mississippi, it was almost like and when I say this, I mean the Louisville fan base on Twitter, because the overall fan base is not the same as the Twitter fan base. The Twitter fan base is like just a microcosm of the.
But they're loud.
But they're like, that's what I was telling somebody earlier. They're like, well, why would Sat leave after the season? And I'm like, well, or because of fans speaking up. I'm like, well, whereas the Twitter fan base is the smallest, he's got access to them, and he doesn't necessarily have access to all the Louisville fans, because the majority of the people, as odd as this is for me, I know more people that don't have social media or Twitter than I do that do have Twitter. So it's like, but he's seeing, like, they are directly adding him and being like, hey, Coach Sack, go jump off a bridge, or, I can't wait for you to leave. And I'm like, that will take a toll on coaches, but I've been saying the whole season, you got to give the guy 4 or 5 seasons before you make that move, because I feel like we messed up, even though we got John L, and that ended up being a great transition between Coop and Bobby. The first time, like, we gave up on Coop, went 7-4, and we won a bowl game his first year. We had the 1-10 year, my sophomore year, and then he had like a 5-7 year, the third year I believe, and then we fired him. Like, I really think he would have benefited from 2 more years. And as you could see, the players he left behind absolutely balled out for Louisville the next 2 seasons. But again, we get off track here. My last point, real quick, and then we'll talk about whatever. I feel like it's important we win the turnover game. As in any game, you give yourself a better chance to win if you force more turnovers than you commit. Malik has been absolutely phenomenal with his decision making this season. 5 interceptions this year, 175 last year. That's not accurate, but he had a lot of interceptions last season. And I feel like your all's quarterback, I like him. I think he's a gutsy quarterback, but I feel like he makes more mistakes throwing the ball when he's pushed out of the comfort zone, which is why I said penetration is key to this, because if we can get him to making mistakes, that'll make it easier for us to win. And I just don't know that he's had enough experience to he may prove me wrong, but I just feel like he's too inexperienced to be able to handle this type of a game. It's in Louisville. So, again, that's just one man's opinion. It is what it is. We're going to get your opinion next, though, TB. What is your score prediction? This is question number 10. What is your score prediction? Who do you have?
Oh, I'm going to go 31-28 Cats. Like I said earlier, if Louisville gets into the 30s, that to me is when I'm going to start to get nervous, because I just don't. When you talk about comfort zone with Will Levis, if it starts being a shootout where he's got to sling that ball, I don't like that at all. Right. So I'm going to say 31-28 because what we need are we need some great games. The football games, it's if you look at it, it's been a lot of blowouts both ways. Yeah. So I think there just needs to be some good games because, like I said, having the game at the end of the year, Clemson, South Carolina, that's meh. Georgia Tech. I mean, Georgia's on a different planet. Florida State. I mean, is this going to be their first matchup where both teams are like 500 or worse? So
probably.
So if Louisville, especially 7:30 ESPN, if Louisville, Kentucky can deliver a really good game, and there've been a few, the 41-38, there've been a few of them that have been, but if Louisville, Kentucky can deliver, oh wow, and at least be that ESPN talking point, I think that benefits both programs, but I'll say 31-28.
All right, I'm going to and honestly, I'm not the homer guy normally. I picked against Louisville a bunch of games this year. So when I say this, everybody's going to be like, "Oh, Jimmy's being a homer." But to me, because it's a 7:30 game on Saturday, because Louisville has been building on momentum, they've been shutting down 1,000-yard rushers. I'm going Louisville 38-17. The momentum, the night game, the confidence in these players, the fact that I feel like also Kentucky's going to overlook them because this is any team that has like a really good year and they start to feel themselves. My senior year at Dawson included, when we were feeling ourselves and then lost in the first round of J-Town. because we thought we were going to blow them off the field, and we didn't. I think there's going to be some of that in play. I think that when you think you're the better team, which the record indicates that, you go into those games sometimes. So if they don't have anybody kind of like keeping them level, I fully expect to see the same thing we saw before the Kyle Bowling game where the players were on the field about to start fights and dancing on the Cardinal bird and stuff like that. I just think there's too much juice. I think there's too much just excitement, and I think the reason I picked Louisville is because in games like this where there's the West Virginia blackout game, Sugar Bowl, and I'm in no way trying to compare that I think this is going to be as like epic quality-wise, but games when Louisville have had their backs up against the wall and people aren't giving them a chance are the games that they tend to win the most. I feel like we'll go to bed happy Saturday night. We'll wake up Sunday morning screaming at Saturday, pun intended. We will praise Saturday. We'll praise Sat all day long along with Jesus in his name and have a good old time. Either way, one of us is going to be happy and the other one's going to be waiting. Well, we'll both be waiting for our bowl game. But, TB, thank you so much for joining me today, man. I really do appreciate it. Can you let the fine people out there on both sides know where they can find all your work and your social media handle?
Yeah, they can check out our show, Cats Talk Wednesday. It's at Cats Talk WED. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter and on the Anchor Network, and we're even on the BS3 network on your Roku device. So we got some TV stuff going.
Okay, big time.
Like that. Yeah, I know.
BT TV, big time TV.
Yeah. And then you can find my personal Twitter account. It's at @TBrown_80, at @TBrown_80 for my favorite sports athlete of all time, the Jerry Rice. So that's where they can find me.
Yeah, and if you really want to find him, just look up most liked and retweeted tweet of 2020, and he'll pop right up there. I promise you. I promise you.
Oh man, that was still a crazy ride. So
it really, like I said, it inspired people all over the country. This wasn't just like, oh, I've trended locally quite a bit. I've never one time I trended nationally, and I thought I was, but it was not no 500,000 likes and 250,000 retweets. It was all right though. But it wasn't like TV, that's for sure.
But quick story, since I'm here in Iowa. I don't know if you saw this the other day. I found a barbershop. And I'm Mr. Kentucky guy when I go in there now. And one of the guys said, hey, I didn't even know they had black people in Kentucky. What do y'all do for fun? I was like, y'all are just Iowa. But then I turn and look, and they got a poster of Muhammad Ali up in the shop. And I said, hey, y'all the ones got a Kentucky guy up on the wall there. That's my hometown guy. What are you talking about?
Right. You can tell they ain't never been to Louisville before.
Black people in Louisville, like, there's one.
So kind of like Iowa's kind of like my where my mom's side of the family's from down there. It's just like, I'll be honest, I've been to Iowa when I was a kid a couple times with my dad. Like, that's another thing real quick. Again, we get off on tangents. It's okay. It's our show. It's my show. It's TB's show. We'll do what we want to do. We'll go as long as we want. But one of the memories I remember, you can tell I've been talking very, very loose. One of my favorite memories from growing up is, like, I come from a very meager household. We had bill collectors knocking on our doors. My mom and dad both were going to college probably around the same time I was in high school because, they stopped to raise a family. They didn't get things done like they should have, but they set a great example for us by going back to college and finishing up those degrees. So by the time I was in high school, they both had decent jobs. And what they would do is they would save up all year and take us on a vacation out west. So we go out west, and I remember Iowa growing up, like, it was Des Moines, and then it was nothing else for miles and miles. So
it's still like that, by the way.
I was going to say, it's still kind of like that.
Absolutely.
A couple of weeks ago, I went up with my wife. My wife has been doing some stuff up in Minnesota, and you got to go through Iowa to get to Minnesota. And we went through Davenport. Davenport seemed like a nice little Louisville-esque town. But then it was nothing but cornfields and those weird solar windmills for miles and miles.
Those things are huge. Things are huge.
They're also kind of creepy too. If you get like about 50 of them in one spot, you think you're like in the Children of the Corn movie or one of those sci-fi movies.
Exactly.
So shout out again real quick to all of our fine sponsors: Fitness Market, Shack in the Back Barbecue, Four Pegs Beer Lounge, Derby City Lawn and Landscaping, All American Pool and Supply Company, and we are working on more currently. If you'd like to sponsor the show, give us a call, 502-694-0375. You can also get in touch with us on social media. On Twitter and Instagram, we are at Card Sport Zone. On Facebook, we're Cardinal Sports Zone, 3 separate words. Hit that like button, make it Facebook official like TB did on Twitter. And you can find our new YouTube channel is at Cardinal Sports Zone, one whole word. Real quick, like I tell everybody, the reason why we got so many different variations of that is our website and our Twitter got hacked about 4 years ago. So when it got hacked, we had to change some stuff up. So it's not uniform yet, but we'll figure out a way to get all that to say the same thing, so you don't have to hear me say that over and over every week. I can just say follow us all at Cardinal Sports Zone or however it is. Speaking of the show, you can find the show on all your podcast avenues, over 120 in all, including Apple, iTunes, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google, Amazon, iHeart, and we just I want y'all to hit subscribe on any of those. I'm really worried because we just got added to Facebook podcast, and I'm that should be real interesting. I'm not really sure whose mom's aunt's gonna like message me and cuss me out or anything. You know how Facebook can be. It's worse than Twitter. But yeah, we're registered with Facebook podcast now, so check us out. If you haven't listened to all the episodes of the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast in the past, go back, check them all out. You can go to cardinalsportszone.com, the place it all began. Go to the tabs at the top, hit the podcast tab, drop down. You can listen to episodes of CSZ on 93.9 from the past, Live with 55, which is the show I did way back in the days. They're all there. And then the CSZ podcast, which is what this is. Check it all out. Shout out to everybody out there who's sharing the podcast. We do appreciate you. TB, you got any final words for us?
I just want both teams to have fun. No, the good thing about this game is it is becoming must-see TV, and I think that's good for everybody. Because, like you said, when they weren't playing, that was dumb. That was dumb. Yeah, and so now I just want to put the Commonwealth's front and center. So let's have a great game and go Cats.
Well, I hope for all of that except for the go-cards on the end there. But we want to thank everybody again for all your support. Thanks for tuning in this week. We love you all. Until next time, this has been Game Day Prep, and this has been the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast with Jeremy Wallman and Terry Brown, the notorious TB. I love this dude. One of the best. In the future, I need to figure out how to do the video, too, because I think this would be a nice little YouTube thing, too. So.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm absolutely, you see Sports Center and they talk, but you can't hear the words at the end over the outro. We're kind of got that vibe going on right now.
Yeah.
All right, I'll shut up now. Here's the outro.